What is going on? We got a special edition, a 2 in 1 week with Somebody Like You podcast. And I'm so stoked for this podcast because I got a good friend of mine from high school, Justin Mondschein, is joining us. He's got one hell of a story. I'm so stoked to have you here, man. I'm going to give you the floor just to give a nice little intro for yourself, and then let's chop it up.
Sick. No, I appreciate it, Ben. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm stoked to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I think you do a lot of great things for a lot of people, and you put a lot of great vibes out in the world, and I can personally appreciate that. So I'm stoked to be here.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, as you can see in the title, if you're watching it live right now, we got a seasoned drummer, a skate photographer, and a man that is learning to thrive with MS. Um, to get into it, man, I know you just released a new album with your band. Tell us a little bit about that, how long you've been drumming, and when did you get into like the music scene?
Yeah, no. So yeah, we put out the first single out of a few that we're gonna put out. We decided, actually, believe it or not, we decided against releasing an album
Okay.
right now. I think as of right now, we're looking to just kind of release a single maybe every 5, 6 weeks or something like that. Keep people on their toes. Seems like the music industry is sort of changing to go that direction, which is tough for me because I grew up with album CDs and buying CDs and listening to CDs cover to cover and reading liner notes. And, obviously in the digital age, things are different in a Spotify streaming age. And I think attention spans are limited these days. I think with social media, everything being instant at your fingertips, it's important to kind of keep putting out consistent content. And so that's kind of what we're doing. I'm in a band called 22. I play drums in it. We started in 2019, just before the pandemic. And it's kind of a funny time period to start a band because obviously, we got together in the summer, got things kicking, started writing songs, went into the studio in January of 2020 and recorded a record for release of March 2020. Fantastic. Put a 4-song EP out on March 20th, which I think was the day that everything shut down, it seemed. And so it died in the water. Nothing really happened with it. We couldn't play on it. We couldn't tour on it. We couldn't, it was tough. But it kind of gave us time to reset and figure out what our future moves were. And once we figured out what we felt comfortable with doing through the pandemic, we ended up getting together once a week, consistently writing songs. And then once the pandemic sort of ended, we had a whole itinerary of music and content and, good times, and went back in, I guess it was January-ish of this past year, and recorded another 4 songs, this time with Matt Brash of the Wonder Years, who is also a North Penn alumni and a really close friend of mine. We did 4 songs with him, and we released the first single this past June 9th. It's on Spotify and other streaming services, and we've had some good reviews on the song, and I think it's cool. I'm excited to get playing on it. We've been playing a lot out, and if anyone's interested and likes fast punk rock, this might be the band for you. So,
Dude, I listened to, I literally pre-saved it before, and I was like, I gotta check this out. And dude, it rocks. It was so cool because I remember like when you were in like Bangarang and stuff like that in high school, and I was like, oh, dude, I haven't heard Justin play since I was calling him J-Mon. You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, cool. And I listened to it, I was like, yo, this is badass.
and I think, and I love that you said that, and I appreciate it. And I think the funny thing about like the Bangarang reference and being in high school and playing that stuff is, like kind of going back to the start of kind of me playing and all that. And kind of like I was saying earlier before we started, everything in life I feel like sort of ties in, at least for me. And I take such pride in how I was raised and how I was brought up in the different communities that I was brought up in. And I think, music is and was a huge part of my life. Skateboarding is and was a huge part of my life, and photography, and everything sort of links in. And I think that with music, is the kind of thing where like, I grew up on early Green Day stuff, and that kind of set the drift for my everything in my life. I think getting into punk rock via Green Day initially in the 90s was sort of a catalyst to get into then, skateboarding scene heavy, which then got me into more punk rock bands, and it kind of bounced over and back and forth. And I think the big thing about the two different, lifestyles is that punk rock is all about, do it yourself. No one's going to hand you things. You have to do it. You have to make it. You have to learn it. If you want to do it, you do it. You fail, you write crappy songs, you get back, you write better ones. You go out. And I think it's about community. It's so much about community and building community and meeting people and networking. And skateboarding is the same kind of thing. You fall down, you get back up, you keep doing it. And, no one's handing you things. And I think that's the big difference really with skateboarding versus a lot of other sort of sports is that, it's based on the individual. And I think that, you don't have a coach teaching you, and which again, there's nothing wrong with either side. It's just such a different, just a totally different environment, I think, for the person learning.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's cool. And I think growing up in the punk rock community, punk rock and hardcore community here in this area, I mean, I'm very grateful. And I think about this all the time. I'm very grateful and prideful to grow up in this area because we've had such an incredible roster of unbelievable bands that have inspired myself and a lot of my peers for our whole lives. And, the people in the community that I've met through the music scene, a real quick funny story I think you might appreciate is, I think when you and I were in 10th grade, it was like my first week in high school. That prior summer, I was playing guitar in a hardcore band, and that hardcore band was made up of a bunch of older guys. And the singer of the hardcore band, George Farrell, was like the captain of the football team at the time. And he was a senior. We were sophomores. And he was like, the big dude. And I was this little tiny, skinny little punk rock skateboarder kid. And George sang in this band. And I'll never forget till the day I die, man. It was a life-changing moment for me that really made so many things make sense. I saw him in the hallway, and he came up to me and he said, yo, if anyone messes with you, you let me know. And I thought it was the coolest thing because I'm this little skinny, scrawny punk rock kid, and he's the star of the football team. And I think that was a perfect example of why I'm so grateful and prideful to be from this area, because our football team would come to punk rock and hardcore shows. The captain of the football team was singing in a hardcore band. The punk rock kids would go to football games and cheer on our friends. Like it was like such like a, it goes against the grain of what you would see in the movies where it was like the jocks are beating up on the punks or whatever it was. It was like there was such camaraderie, at least from, and I'm not saying that this is everyone's experience necessarily, but there was such camaraderie between human beings that I interacted with, and that always stuck with me. And I thought that was so cool. So shout out George Farrell. Thank you still. But I think that was the coolest thing ever. And that still stuck with me. And that's 20 some odd years later, I'm sure, it's like the craziest thing. But we've had so many incredible bands and so many incredible people from Lansdale area that made it. Wonder Years, obviously, and Balance from Doylestown, and Starting Line from Horseshoe. I mean, everyone from this area, this area just took off. And I'm proud to be from this community. I think it's incredible. And I learned so many life lessons and made so many lifelong friends that I can, push forward into. So yeah, it's really incredible.
Dude, how cool that. And I always think about like skateboarding, like that is the punk rock of sports. Like, you know what I mean? Like I remember like, I think it was like around our age, obviously skateboarding, like I think like 80s and 90s skateboarding was just more like badass. Like it was just straight, like talk about punk rock. It was of course like the Clash type shit, right? Descendants and shit like that. And then all of a sudden, like you start having like when MTV or you even got on ESPN and stuff like that, you could start going to like the X Games and stuff like that. When it started, like I feel like just blowing up. And I just remember kind of thinking that same thing. It was just kind of like I was never a skateboarder, but like I had a skateboard. I like did BMX stuff. We build ramps in the woods and just go hurt ourselves because we were just being kids, right? But I agree with you, man. I do think that there's this thing about like that community that is like it's almost. I think there is like that in sports too, but like when you like show that you're gonna fall and continue to get back up, that's when people are going to start helping you get back up, showing you like you're earning your stripes in that community kind of thing.
Totally. Totally.
And I think that like it's just was such a cool experience in high school. And like definitely shout out George Farrell. George Farrell probably has no idea who I am. And I was on like the sophomore football team, which is like the funny part is like I played football, well, like on the sophomore team and he was on varsity. But like I do remember there was just something about him that was like you said, it was the clash of both worlds. That just it was this beautiful marriage because it came to the games. And then like I know I was like really good friends growing up with like Bob Wynn, Joe
Yeah.
Whitelock, Mike Bones, Jack Winter, all of them guys, which was like Joe was playing basketball and stuff like that, but he was out singing in bands. He was out doing his thing. Bob the Red Man, like I
Yeah.
love, like we were playing baseball together and stuff. Like it was so Zach Calhoun, like
Yeah.
Hoon was awesome. Like I think it was just like whether it's our age, I'm sure other ages and classes do the same, but like I felt like that mix of sports and the punk rock and band scene just brought such a different energy if you were part of both worlds. Because I remember you in high school, I remember like not like I knew you were like a drummer in Bangarang, I knew all this stuff, but like I was always just like he just gets along with everybody, like
Yeah.
who no, and like you said, it could be part to George just being like anyone who messes with you, I got this. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how I felt about you, man. Like everybody just like had nothing bad to say about you ever. And it was always just kind of like you always wanted to like if you were showing up somewhere, just kind of like you felt like you were with someone special because everyone had something good to say about you. I still feel that way about you. Like when we talk and stuff like that, I'm like,
I appreciate
he's
that.
just the way I talk about him, like he's just I say it to my mom, like anybody like who's on your podcast, I'm like, he's just such a good dude. Like he does all this really cool stuff, but at the core of it, he's just like a really good person.
Dude, I really appreciate that. And, I think that like, I mean, and it sounds, it sounds lame or whatever. I don't know. But I think about the legacy that we as human beings leave on the planet or will leave on the planet at some point. I think about this all the time, specifically more so, obviously, since my diagnosis a couple of years ago. But I think that, every day this topic of what am I leaving this world when I do go at some point? And I think that I just want to be remembered how you just stated me, and I appreciate that because that means a lot to me. And that's, I take pride in being the. I mean, again, and this sounds stupid, but whatever. Sure, I mean, whatever. It's cliche, but truly, I take pride in being the kindest, most genuine, authentic version of myself that I can be. And I'm usually I'm high energy and I talk a lot and I'm stoked all the time, but I am actually stoked all the time. And I am actually genuinely interested in my friends' well-being and the people around me. And I I like my favorite thing in the world. Nothing makes me more stoked than seeing people I care about being successful and doing well because it amplifies me and it makes me even happier about everything. And I just get so pumped. And I think that, and that's anyone. It's like, just seeing people happy is so important to me. And I think that I've always been sort of a people pleaser in a way, which I'm trying to get into my brain that like I don't necessarily have to be a people pleaser in that sense, but my energy is genuine. And it even gets to the point where like, I went to a show. We went and saw one of my favorite bands play a couple weeks ago. And I was walking through and I ended up running into my friend Claire and her new boyfriend, Michael, who I hadn't met. And I was and just like seeing their relationship online, like made me so happy. I was like, she deserves happiness. Like, this is so sick. He seems like such a cool dude, and I just got I like saw them. I met him and he was so rad. And I was like, this is so sick. Like, it just like made my week, like I was just so stoked. I love seeing the people I care about doing well, and that's just a little example. It's just like anything happens, someone does something cool. I read about it online. I get so stoked, and it's like, I genuinely feel that. And those vibes really like reverberate and I feel all of that. And I think that I want to leave this world with a legacy of just being a kind, nice, genuine human. And that's what I strive for every day that I wake up. And I want, and it's like the littlest, smallest things I can do to put a smile on someone's face or do something nice for someone, elevate someone's mood. I walk through work. Hey, I like your shirt. I like your shoes. Just something nice and genuine.
Yep.
When I look at, it's like the singer of my band, Tony, I've known him forever. He goes and gets his hair cut and I go pick him up for band practice. And I go, dude, your hair looks nice. And he goes, huh, Thanks. You know what's funny? I never realized, I never really look at people's haircuts or anything. And I was like, honestly, I just speak my mind. If,
Mhm.
it's like if I see someone, doesn't matter who it is, I don't care. It's like, Tony, I like your haircut. Like as if he, cares. But it's just the fact that I have, I just like speaking out positivity. I think what I put out comes back to me in the world. And I've been grateful to have such an incredible life. Obviously ups and downs, but overall, I've had an unbelievable life. If I died tomorrow, I would be stoked. I mean, I'm not stoked that I'd be dead, but stoked that I have a legacy that I would leave for people, and I hope that they would agree with me on that. So,
Oh, dude, I think, and that's such a macro perspective to have, is because we do get caught up in this day to day all the time of like, I want to be like, for me, it's like, I want to help as many people as I can. I want to be financially stable, financially free by helping people. Right. And then sometimes we get caught up in that financial part of it. Like, I know for a while when I was feeling the most unproductive or at my rock bottom in the like business world, it was just kind of like I was focusing on money and I was trying to paint it in the color of help. Like I had to like take a step back and realize like you're not doing it for the intentions you set out on. You got caught up in the rat race. And you being able to have that macro of just like every day, what I want to do is just be kind. I want to enjoy the things I do. If I have a nice thought about somebody, like I'm gonna say it. Like, because I think you're right. I think the world needs so much more of that. And like, yeah, obviously life has its obstacles and we're all going through our own shit. But no matter if you're going through shit or not, the thing that's the most important and legacy defining is how you come out the other end of that. And if you come out with lessons and then try to share it with other people and spew kindness, it's like that is we're all just love, right? Like we're taught hate, we're taught all of this other stuff. Like we were taught to feel weird being nice to somebody. When we were kids, we just said whatever was on our mind. Like you still have that kid in you where you're just like, no, if it comes to my mind, I'm just going to say it. And so
yeah,
happens it's nice things.
yeah,
Which is huge, man. I think that like that's something I've really admire. And like sometimes, like you said, the people pleasing thing, there's this fine line I've learned. It's like, am I people pleasing? Because I am a people pleaser as well. Or am I just being nice and it's weird for people?
yeah,
Because sometimes like it comes across as like, is he hitting on me? Is he is he interested in me? It's like, no, man, I'm just nice. Like I just love to see, like you said, I love to see people smile, be happy. Like I know people told me like something about like whether it be my eyes or my hair, like when I was a kid, and for the rest of my life, I would pick out outfits because I knew I looked good in something or something
yeah.
like that because someone was nice to me. Like that's just what I want to be for someone else.
Totally. And those little compliments or those little remarks go a long way. I mean, like you said, and it reverberates. And I feel like a lot of the time people need to hear these. I mean, again, they need to hear it whether it's conscious or not, but also it feels good to say something nice to somebody. It feels good for me to give a gift of positivity per se. I think it's like a nice thing to do. And I think it's important. I mean, like you said, it's like those little things, starting with George Farrell in the hallway to me, like said that. And that was so nice to me. It changed. I mean, it's something I remember so many, many, many years later. And so I know that, like you said, like, hey man, that your eyes look good with that shirt or whatever it may be, that stuck with you. And then when you go to pick out a wardrobe, that is something you think about. And it's these little things that are so important, whether it's your hair, your shoes, your eyes, or telling someone you got their back when they need to hear it. I think is so important. And it's little comments like that that inspire me, honestly.
Dude, and I mean, I think that's just a big thing because I mean, you like you just mentioned a couple of years ago, you got diagnosed with MS, and that I'm sure was just an absolute world stopper. And it was like, okay, you had to like gather your get your shit together and be like, how am I going to get through this kind of thing? So like, I want to leave that floor open for you because I definitely don't want to tell your story at all. I want you to be able to tell you like with like with the legacy you want to leave and almost feeling like that legacy was now being tested, like what was my legacy that I've been leaving for the past 35 years or 33 years at that point. What were the things that helped you one get through it, but how do you feel like your mindset has shifted up to this day?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, sort of like my quick backstory is, I um, had been experiencing some odd health symptoms, and I'm sure you can relate. Being a guy, it's like, something happens to us, we get anxious about it, we Google, are we going to die? Google says, yes, it's great. And then we forget about it 6 hours later, we're going over their lives, and no doctor call, no nothing. Like, that's how my life's always been. The skateboarder in me is like, I break my ankle and I walk to work the next day, or whatever stupid thing I do. You know what I mean? It's like the dumb thing. And I'm sure I'll have terrible arthritis when I'm older, but I think yeah, it's always been that kind of thing. And I think that, I was having some odd symptoms, and some unexplainable symptoms. And I think MS in itself is so hard to diagnose because everyone's MS is different. I mean, there's a lot of similarities in symptoms, but the onset is always different, for people. And I didn't know anything about it. I had heard the term multiple sclerosis. I had heard the term MS. But I really didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anyone with it, and it doesn't run in my family. So it was scary. I remember driving to work one day, and my vision kind of started to fluctuate a little bit, and I started having cognitive function issues, which was scary. And a week prior to this day, I had set up an appointment with my primary, and this is 2020 during the pandemic. And I explained to him some of my symptoms, and my primary doctor was great, amazing guy. He listens to me and he takes everything I say seriously. And not just now because I have a chronic disease, but even before this, he was like, I would bring something up to him and I would feel comfortable talking to him about something, which is super important to have that kind of relationship with a doctor. And so I remember bringing things up to him, and I told him my symptoms, and I think in his mind, he probably aligned it with the symptoms of MS, but without saying, I want to get you tested for MS, because he didn't say that. I'm sure he knew that would, stoke my anxiety, and that wouldn't be good. So he kind of just quietly was like, all right, no problem. He's like, I'd like you, let's get some MRIs done, and didn't say what for. Just, let's get some MRIs done. Here's a script for it. See if we can get them done in the next, 2 weeks, whatever it is. Okay, cool. Clearly knows how to handle people with things like that, and gave me a script. Fast forward a couple days later, I'm driving to work. I start having the cognitive issues. My vision starts to go in and out. I called him and I said, hey, I think I'm going to take myself to the emergency room instead of work today. And he's like, okay, no problem. Let them know you're coming, whatever. So I go to the emergency room. I'm by myself. They pull me in. I let them know, hey, my doctor gave me a script for an MRI. I couldn't book it. It's height of COVID. I couldn't book it for weeks out. I think it might be something sort of emergency. And so they pulled me in and did brain, neck, and spine MRIs in the ER, basically. And within 3.5 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was, I was in the ER by myself. The doctor came in, closed the curtain. It was like a movie, and said, I hate to let you know this, but you are a clear multiple sclerosis diagnosis. And I didn't know what that meant. It felt like a death sentence to me. I mean, I broke down. I was by myself, and I knew nothing about it. He's like, I'll get back to you with some more information. I'll bring in some neurologists that can explain more about the disease, but your MRI results show you are a glaring MS. You have glaring MS lesions. You're in a flare. And so that was a lot to take in. I mean, I was very taken back. The unknown was horrifying. I mean, again, I'm not really much of a crier, but I broke down. I was just like, I didn't know what was going on. I thought my life was over. And I was texting my partner, Kelly, and she's just the best. I mean, she's so supportive through everything. And, kind of calming me down. And, and then I ended up doing a 5-day inpatient. That ER visit turned into a 5-day inpatient visit where I was on IV steroids to kind of calm the inflammation. And I went through so many different phases within those 5 days. It was like the first day I'm reading everything I can about MS, and Google multiple sclerosis, and all your fears about Googling diseases. You see the images and you read the stories, and and all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to skate. I'm not going to be able to sing. I'm not going to be able to play drums. I'm not going to be able to shoot. It was just all of this stuff at once. I'm going to lose my mobility, and I'm going to lose my vision, and, this and that. And I was freaking out. And I think that I can really honestly say that I had such an incredible support system, of course, in Kelly, who, of course, came to my inpatient room and stayed with me a lot of the time. My family is incredible with support. Um, but I got some really inspirational support from a source that I never would have expected. Um, I was sent an article while I was in the ER, and this is such, again, one of these inspiring stories that happened to me that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
I'm laying in bed. I'm in the inpatient room. It's my second day there, and I'm like through the bulk of like the horror, physical upset, and I'm laying in bed and I can barely move and I have no dexterity in my hands and I can't hold a pencil and I can't stand up straight. And um, I get sent a news article, um, or like sort of a journalistic article from Australia. One of my friends sent, and it was about this girl Kat who was diagnosed at the same age that I was, and the article was maybe 2 years old at the time. And she, prior to her diagnosis, she was a competitive mountain biker and a kayaker and a swimmer, triathlete. And I read this story and it was so inspiring to me that it literally sort of, for lack of better terminology, like pull up my big boy pants, a little bit and realize that this is not a death sentence. She goes through and she kind of talks about her experience in this article, and it was so inspiring to read, and it really was that positive energy that I needed at that time, was just to read this article and realize that here's someone that's like me, that's super active and does all these things, um, continuing to do these things that she loves to do. And I needed that so bad at that time. And I ended up reading the article and I emailed her, or I DM'd her, or whatever the case. I said, "Hey, I'm emailing you from the hospital. Newly diagnosed, was diagnosed yesterday. Know nothing about this disease, but reading your article was so inspiring to me." Um, I forget what I said exactly, but not expecting a response. Um, and she responded back to me and she was like, "Dude, you got this." And we ended up talking for a long time. And she went out of her way to spend so many hours with me explaining different things and medications and DMTs and different routes you can take and different therapies. Took this time out of her day across the world. She lives in Perth in Australia. And I was just like so taken back for a stranger to want to help someone else. And that was so inspiring to me. And she's been such an incredible support system to me. She's been there to answer all the questions that I've asked. She's been there to help me when I had a bad day. It's just like this cool thing. And I don't even know this person in real life. Well, in person, I guess, but she's been such an incredible inspiration to me. And she's another person that I hope to continue a lifelong friendship with, despite being the crappy circumstances. She understands, obviously what I'm going through. I understand what she's going through. And she's an incredible person. I mean, she's a competitive, winning, successful mountain biker. She's a triathlete. She swims, she kayaks, she's unbelievably active, and she kills it in life. And it's people like that are so inspiring to me. And I hope to be the Cat to somebody else, and that's a legacy I want to take on. I want to be that positive energy for someone going through something difficult like this. That's all I can really ask for is to be given that chance. Hopefully, for that unlucky individual, I hope I can be that light, like she
Yeah,
does.
man.
So.
Dude, I think one of thank you for sharing that story, because I mean, that is so powerful to hear, especially like mental health in men, right? Hearing that we can be vulnerable, feel those feelings. And like you said, this is the peak of 2020. You're in an emergency room by yourself to get this diagnosis. You don't have support there. Like, this is something like where like just the only thing with you at that time is now emotions, raw emotions, like not putting on a face for anybody. It's like shit. And I think that's just so important for people to hear, that like we're allowed to feel that oh shit moment, right? It's okay. We're human. That's what's supposed to happen. And then I think, like you said, you want to be that light. I think you've talked about your legacy and stuff. And the powerful thing about that is, like you say, the things you put out come back to you. And I think like this is a prime example of the things you've put out in your life, like came back to you, not the MS diagnosis, but like it was almost like all of that kindness and love and just all those things you emanate, right? We're almost preparing this, like this diagnosis was on its way, and like the love came back tenfold to you because you needed it, right?
Yeah.
So it was like it's almost kind of like being able to look in the mirror and see like I am this for other people. Otherwise, all this love would have had no business coming back to me.
Yeah, and I do believe that, and I think that that's. I mean, I think you're right on the money with that, and I think that you know, I would like to hope that the good karma that I've received is karma that I've put out in the world. Um, and you know, and again, as difficult as that situation is, was, has been, will continue to be, I know that I have a great support system. Um, and again, I want to inspire people, and I want to be able to be that crutch for someone who needs it, as you know, as Kat was for me. So
Oh, I think just even talking about it, right? Because before like I saw you post, I remember like because we didn't really talk that much post high school. Like we like followed each other and stuff that liked each other's stuff. I like to follow your journey, but like we didn't really like catch up or like shoot each other's DMs. And I think I saw that post and I was at like kind of like almost the peak of my anxiety and my panic. And like I had no idea what you were going through, but I knew the circumstances in which I was feeling completely not myself, not my old self, not whatever it was. I just like felt like I was like, I need to reach out to him, just let him know if he needs anything. Like I'm here. Like I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm going through something. It wasn't about me. It was one of those like, man, I see someone else going through something that like we have to kind of be in this together. And I think, like you said, like I don't know what it was. I don't know what karma's been out there, but like it's more of like following that gut feeling, that intuition to like connect with people because we all need people to connect with. And moments like that, like I'm sure you had so much outpouring love come to you. And it's almost like one of those things of being like, I have been good to people. Because otherwise I could just be sitting here and people be like, that dickhead.
yeah, right, yeah, right.
You
Like you
know?
deserve that. Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that kind of leads into. I mean, you're right, and I think that, and I appreciated you obviously reaching out. I mean, dude, I appreciate every. You know, it was great, and I'm glad that we kind of rekindled like this friendship that we have, and that's important to me. And I think one of the cool things with as as tough the internet as tough as the internet can be these days, you know, I will say that you know, of course, and I don't post a lot about this, and not because I am not an open book about it, because by all means I'm a totally open book about it, but really because I don't want people to feel bad for me, and that's my big thing. I don't want. I was never a woe is me person, and I never wanted to put. I never wanted to put bad energy out, or you know, and everybody goes through it, and that's the problem with the internet is you see what people want you to see, you know, necessarily. I did make a post when I was diagnosed, and I did it while I was in the hospital laying in bed, and you know, I wrote something up and posted it, and I was really glad that I did that for a couple reasons. I needed, at that time, I needed the support from people. I needed to know that I had people out there thinking of me and sending good vibes. um and so many people had come out and reached out to me and said nice things, and it meant so much to me, to the point where, you know, I was laying in bed for hours in the hospital, unable to really walk straight or use my hands correctly, reading the comments that people were leaving me over and over and over and over again, and just feeling the love and support from people. I was like, this little Instagram comment that someone took the time out of their day to leave me meant more than they thought it was when they were leaving it to me, you know, and that was so important to me. And I read those comments, same comments over and over and over and over again. Every time I felt like my mood started to dissipate, I would just go back and read the same comments and just think like how lucky and grateful I am to have all of these people in my life who care about me. You know, whether they're my best friend that I see all the time, or the person who I haven't seen since middle school. You know, it's like these people are thinking of my well-being, and that meant so much to me, and that went so far. And I think that in the people in my life, the people who I hold in my life, like I know you talk about a lot of time on your podcast, the people that you keep close, the people that you have in your life, they are my honest to God, like it sounds so stupid. I hear myself talking like this is so cliche, but truly, everybody is my inspiration. Like I'm inspired by the little things that, again, going back, I'm inspired by the little things that I see on my feed. You know, anything, any little thing. I mean, again, meeting a friend's new boyfriend, amazing, love it. Like listening to my friend's new song they put out, watching my friend's skate clip, like the dude kills it. I'm like, whoa, it gets me so pumped. And I like going in and seeing these things. I didn't want to drag anyone down with like, day 5 in the hospital, lows, like I didn't want to do that. So, I touch on it a little bit. My main thing is I don't want people to feel bad. There's no reason for anyone to feel bad for me by any means. And I think that, I was given this. It's interesting. I do want to touch on this too before my mind's all over the place. I apologize if I'm jumping around.
That's what this podcast is for, man. I love this. Keep going.
I think it's interesting because, years ago, I felt like things were going, my life, I've always been very lucky. My life has been incredible, honestly. I've gone through hard times, obviously, like anyone else has, but I wouldn't even change those things necessarily because it made me have the strong base that I have. And I remember in 2019 getting laid off from a job I spent a lot of years at. They had a big layoff. I was part of a 65 person layoff, and it was crazy, and I thought I'd be there for a long time, and I was so close with my coworkers, and I was so scared, I didn't see it coming, and I was in a big group, and I got laid off, and I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to continue a career in what I do, which is fairly niche? And I remember panicking, same kind of thing. I felt this panic and this anxiety, and I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, I sat down and I thought about it. And at the time I was single and I was living by myself in an apartment, and I was like, you know what? I've been employed my whole life. And maybe this next 6 months of unemployment, maybe this is my break where I can reset everything that I need to reset. And those 6 months were honestly probably the best 6 months of my life. And I did so many things that were bucket list checks that would sound stupid to the normal person that does them, but it was like, go out to eat by yourself, sit at a table, go to the movies by yourself, take a road trip by yourself. And I made this list, Ben, I'm not even kidding you. I made this list and I was like, I want to go tent camp in New England by myself. I've never got to explore out there. I'm going to bring my skateboard. I'm going to bring my camera. I'm going to bring a tent. I'm going to drive my truck, and I'm going to tent camp for a couple of days. And I did that, and it was incredible. And it was so important to me. And I went to I sat down at a restaurant by myself at a table. It was like these things that I had never done that sound so easy and stupid, but I'd always done them with someone. And I felt like these are things I want to do for myself, by myself. And it was so important for me to do that. And I learned so much in those 6 months that, and every day, and it wasn't like, and the other thing too, is I've always kind of had this personality where I've been so high energy and I'm so fast paced. I'm always moving. And I do that to myself because I feel like I work better like that. I work better with a packed schedule. I feel like I need to be productive every single day. I need to be doing something productive. I have a hard time sitting still. I think being a photographer, career photographer, the bane of my existence is editing. I hate editing so much. I love shooting. I love the act of shooting. I love lighting. I love setting up shots. I love composing. I hate the post work. And it's not that I feel like I'm bad at it. It's just that I can't sit still. It's like this kind of thing where I'm like, but the feeling of being productive and productivity is, I thrive off it. And so I wanted to make sure that every day of those 6 months of unemployment, I was as productive as possible, whether it was doing something I've always wanted to do or doing something to set up my future. I was productive every day, and I had an absolutely incredible 6 months. Unbelievable. And that was so important to me. And that built such a base for who I am and how I go through my day-to-day now and how I handle stress and all kinds of other things. It's just incredible. But I will say at the end of the 6 months, I remember I thank you, Brian Mathias. I landed a great job thanks to him, who's always helped me out all the time. He's one of my best friends. I've known him since we were kids, obviously, and we've always been close. And he's helped me out a million times, so thank you. But he got me a great job where I'm at now, and helped get me the great job that I'm at now. And I remember thinking, I was talking to one of my close friends at the time, and I remember her saying, everything always works out for you. Everything always works out for you. Like, how is this? Like this kind of thing. And I was like, and that comment kind of sat with me. And I started to think at this time, I was like, I've had such a good life. Everything really has worked out for me when I think about it. Every move that I've wanted to make has worked somehow, knock on wood, and everything has worked. It's like I really, in that time period, I was doing anything I wanted to do. So stupid. I woke up in the morning one day and I said, I want to do a triathlon. And I didn't even know anything about it. And like, I don't swim, I don't run. I am a cyclist, but I don't, but like the other two, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I signed up for a triathlon in those unemployed months, and I trained for a month and I ran a triathlon. You know what I mean? And I finished it fairly well. And I was like, dude, I can do anything if I put my mind, it was like that kind of thing. And I remember her saying to me, everything always works out for you. Everything always works out for you. And that sat with me. And then I started thinking, something's going to happen. I'm going to have some kind of trial, tribulation that's going to happen to me that's going to try to knock me down. And that was the end of 2019. And what do you know, halfway through 2020, I get a major life-changing diagnosis. So with that echoing in my head, I was like, I need to make this work out for me. I need to make sure that I wake up productive every day, no matter what physical state I'm in. If I can't walk straight and I can't skate or I can't, ride my road bike, I want to do something else that's productive, whatever that is. I want to do something productive. And on some days, the only productive thing I can do is compliment someone, put a smile on someone's face. But that's enough for me to feel productive. And that's so important to me. And it helps me get through my day to day. And it helps me, it just helps me in my own life. I mean, again, putting positive energy out makes me feel better. And again, I think just thinking about the karma coming, the good karma coming back. I just try to do anything I can to really feel like I'm putting a good energy out in the world.
Dude, and I think what, like, I hear it, and all I could see is like all of that stuff prepared you for that moment. Like you're saying, because I went through a similar thing when I moved out to Colorado. I went to visit and I was like, I've never sat in a restaurant by myself. That gives me crazy anxiety. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go. And so I just sat at the bar and I was like, all right, I can have a beer or something like that. I'll take the edge off. And when you start accomplishing those things in life that follow it start to become a little bit easier because you're like, oh, I can conquer these things. So like you going out and sitting in New England, tenning and skating and stuff like that sets you up for that moment. You are sitting in an emergency room by yourself. You don't have that. Like if you don't go through all these, that could have, I mean, not saying that it wasn't probably so hard, but you were okay alone. Like that wasn't another thing on top of your diagnosis coming in. Like you're like, okay, I'm okay here. Yep. Which I think, you don't have, like you said, I'm going to bring something's going to come in. I call it the competitive brain. I don't know if you hear me say it all the time. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit with these feelings for a little bit. And then I'm going to turn that competitive brain on and be like, what are we made out of? How do we make, like, what is the best version of me? And how does he get through this? And I always think about, like, I think about that all the time when I'm in a tough spot. Like, what's the best version of me do? And like, I look at you and you're like, he makes that post because he needs to sit with his emotion. Because without making that post, you don't have that love and those affirmations coming through. During the tough time, you don't have someone in the room. So now you can read the love coming through. And then all of a sudden you were just like, productivity is my mindset. That gives me, and productivity, like you said, could just be telling someone they look good in a shirt. You like their shoes, their haircut looks good. Yeah. Like that is something I think is like so lost. And we mix productivity up for finishing things. Like we think that like a busy mind is a productive mind. No, sometimes a busy mind is just a busy mind and doesn't get anything done.
Right. Yeah.
Like if I know you and I see what you do, and like a published skate photographer in Thrasher, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just not a busy mind, man. You're a productive mind. And that's such a different thing, because a busy mind can think to compliment people or think to get things done, but all it does is ever think. Like you're a doer, which I think on top of this MS diagnosis proves to people that like the mindset is so important. Like without that mindset, you're just a thinker. You're not a doer.
Totally. Dude, you nailed it. Honestly, you nailed it right on the head. And that's what it is. And it's such, I think that MS as a disease is so relative to a lot of the topics that you touch on in this podcast, because it's such a, I mean, it's a very, obviously it's a very physical disease, but it's a very, very mental disease too, where you really have to have the right mindset. And I can see how people could progress faster not being in a prime mindset for things. And I think that being given this gift of this disease on my high energy, uh, productivity needing brain is it's a good challenge, honestly, to be honest with you, because it's like the days that, my shins feel like they're stone for no reason, things like that. I'm like, you know what? Movement makes me feel better. And I know that movement makes me feel better. And like you've talked about on your podcast too, motivation and drive to get up and do things. I remember the one podcast you were saying your grandmother would always say, just do it, just do it, just get up and do it. And that's so important. And that's something I live by all the time where, again, there's days where I get up and my legs feel like I ran a marathon and all I did was wake up from sleeping, and it's like, and everybody, and again, I'm not saying I'm the only one, everybody has issues like this, but there's days where I get out of bed and I have no balance. I'm falling over walking to the bathroom in the morning. It's like this kind of thing. But movement truly helps me. Physical movement helps me tenfold with this disease. I have restless leg syndrome really, really bad. To the point where I mean, honestly, I don't believe it's anxiety driven. I really think it's just like, I just have this energy that needs to be expelled and I can't sit still ever, and so my leg is constant. It's why I started playing drums in the first place. My teacher's always yelling at me for banging on the desk, but I need to expel this energy, and movement truly makes me physically feel better. When my legs are hurting, going for a walk or riding my road bike with my club is like, it helps me immensely. And when I'm physically in motion, that's when I feel the best. And so I have to remember that some days when I wake up in the morning and I'm just unmotivated and it's gross outside and I'm like, oh, dude, I can't, I just fell walking to the bathroom. It's like, get up and keep moving. And I think that's, again, going back, that's where skateboarding comes into play. You know what I mean? It's like it's a learned trait as a skateboarder that, you're going to eat shit. Excuse my French. You're going to eat shit. You're going to get back up and you're going to keep moving. You're going to try the trick again. You're going to do it until you either break a leg or you're going to make it, and that's kind of, that's an inspiring thing that has always inspired me about skateboarding. And I can equate it to this disease too. It's like, I need to move. I need to get up and move. And when I do, I feel great, and I think that having the opportunity to do that, and I don't know that my mobility will always allow me to do these things. I mean, I hope so. There's a lot of great advances in medicine, and I'm on a great therapy right now, medication therapy for my MS, but that allows me to do these things. But overall, depending on how the disease progresses, at some point, I may not be able to ride my road bike or I may not be able to skate. And you know what? I'll take it when the day comes. To touch on photography, I've always been a photographer, but the skate photography stuff, I really started to take kind of seriously really around my diagnosis period. And it was because I didn't have the balance and strength to ride a skateboard. So I was like, God, I just want to be out. I worked for a long time with a ton of other local skateboarders and residents to get the concrete park we got built in Lansdale done. I was on the board, we were working with the board and doing all these things for years. That park opened while I was in the hospital. So it was like and I was like, fuck, this, I mean, I was stoked, but I couldn't be there. So I knew when I was strong enough to come back out, I knew I wouldn't be able to ride a skateboard for probably months at that point. But I knew I wanted to be there and I wanted to contribute to the community. And so coming out with a camera and shooting skateboarding was super important to me. And,
super important to that park too.
Dude, important to the park, important to the community, important to, I mean, everybody, it really helped out so many people, mainly me, just in honing, a craft. I've been, background for anyone who doesn't know me, I've been shooting in the automotive industry for full time for, I mean, God, like 11 years now or 12 years, whatever it's been. And I've always been a car guy, motorcycles, this and that. Well, I've always been a skateboarder.
Oh, one of those car guys.
Yeah, not like, not, yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's like one of those things where like, I've kind of like channeled my hobby into my career in a different, I've never, not in mechanics, but in the other side, in the content, in the creative side of it, which I thought was awesome. And so it's like, I work in the automotive industry. I still do, as a photographer. but skateboarding was always my passion. It was meant so much to me, more so than anything. And so kind of funneling my photography into focusing on skateboarding was beneficial to me because I couldn't physically ride a skateboard for a couple months, and showing up and being around the community that I love and contributing to it was so important to me. And to this day, I mean, now I'm skateboarding again, trying to, and shooting heavy. And honestly, Ben, like, there's so many weeks where I'm like, dude, I don't want to ride a skateboard. I want to shoot skateboarding. I always want to be there and I want to be in the community, but I find such satisfaction and productivity in being able to document and capture what I love. And then to revert back into what we were talking about, a legacy. I mean, dude, I'm documenting a time period in this area in skateboarding that people are going to be able to look back and be like, damn, look at this shot from 2020, or look at this shot from 2021, 10, 15 years in the future, in print, whether it's the magazines that I've shot for or whatever it may be, providing something, putting something out in the world. I'm such a creative. I know you are too. It's like, I thrive off these things. And
dude, you've made like, talk about making lemonade out of lemons, or making something, like, you took your trials and tribulations and you turned them into like gold, because like you said, you work so hard to get that. I was just at my nan's the other day, and my aunt's there, and she's talking about, like, oh my gosh, you should see the skate park down on 4th, because my nan lives right behind the pool. Like, literally, I used to go to 4th Street with my grandfather. He used to sneak me in behind him all the time, and just like, it was so funny. So, and I was like, well, Justin, who's going to be on my podcast, literally was on the board to get all that done. And like you said, like, it would have been really cool to just like drop in and skate there on the opening day, but like, your gift and your journey had different plans, and you were like open enough, right, to see that and explore that, opposed to just sitting there being like, woe is me, I was on the board, I don't get to see this freaking open, this sucks, this is stupid, I did all this hard work for nothing. No, you were like, I have a different way to capture this moment, which is like, yeah, of course it would have been awesome to cut the banner and drop in, like, right, that would have been awesome, but you're capturing the legacy of this spot, which is, not only did you help build it, design it, all of the wonderful stuff, get funding for it, I'm sure, and then all of a sudden now you're the one capturing all of this.
Yeah, no, 100%, dude. I mean, that's exactly what it was. And I didn't, I didn't look at it again, like you just said. I wasn't sitting there like, damn, this sucks. This blows. Like, I'm so like, I was stoked and I was excited to see all the highlight clips of everyone skating. And I knew that I was excited to get out and get there as soon as I could, whether it be on a skateboard or not, which turned out, again, not to be, but on a camera. And that was so important to me. And also tell your nan that I'm sorry about the loud music if she's right behind me.
I'm sure she doesn't care. My nan's a down woman, man. She's all about it. She is cool. She probably can't hear it anyway. If she does, she's a night owl. She's probably up watching the Phillies.
Perfect. Good. Then I'm glad in that case. But yeah, no, I mean, dude, that's what it is, and I think that being able to again, create this legacy, whether it be music, whether it be, the print magazines I've shot for, and a future book I'd like to put out with my work, and things like that I want to put out, that people can look back and physically hold something, or audibly listen to something that said, how would I describe this dude? Like, well, check out his photography, or listen to his old bands or whatever. Like, that's important to me, and I like putting my creative energy into something productive that anyone can get a hold of.
I think your perspective comes really, like, it shines through in your photography, because we were talking when you were doing my headshots, and I was like, I thought you were a skate photographer as you were skating. I thought that's like what got you into it, was like from a young age. I just always thought that was like a hobby, because I connected a photographer and skating.
Yeah.
But like, even like, I see your stuff and it's so uniquely you. Like, I've never seen anyone shoot the way you do. That's why I just assumed you always did this. I literally thought your full-time gig was shooting for skate magazines. And then we caught back up. I think, like, then at one point, I'm pretty sure I thought like you did your own skate magazine. I was like, this is just what he did. I had this whole like idea of who J-Mon became. It was like, he runs his own skate magazine, he's got all this stuff, he's the editor, the photographer, I had this whole version of you in my head. I'm not far off from it, but like, it was
yeah, no, I mean, dude, honestly, and even that's cool. Like, I think, like, I mean, dude, I wish I did. I shoot on staff for a magazine called Palette. that is sort of a skate creative art-based magazine out of the Lehigh Valley. That's awesome. So that's been a mag that I've sort of been shooting for a little while now. But no, I've never shot full-time skateboarding full-time. Though I would love to. So if anyone's listening, needs a full-time skate photographer, hit me up.
If anyone knows anyone,
Yeah.
Justin is looking.
Yeah, I'm looking, man. I'm looking very, very specific, but I will be willing to relocate, but yeah, no, dude, I appreciate that. And I think that it's cool. And I think the most important one, another really important thing for me, too, was, I mean, again, growing up in the punk rock hardcore community and growing up in the skateboarding community, I feel like I found myself early, and I don't know. And I think I was very lucky because, it was like, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, listening to Green Day for the first time when I was 8 years old, or whatever it was, buying Dookie when in the mid 90s. And that changing my life, being like, this is accessible to me. This feels like something I could do if I work hard enough. And I think, being into punk rock when I was a kid, I still listen to the same, I mean, my musical tastes have broadened substantially, but I'm a punk rock kid at heart. I play in a double time punk rock band. My band sounds like a band you would hear in 1998 on a Fat Records compilation. And I love that because that's important to me. That's what I love. And I think I've always stayed true to who I am as a person. I mean, if you looked at me, if you saw me today at 35 years old and you saw a photo of me when I was 12, I'm wearing all black punk rock t-shirt and I'm on a skateboard and I'm like, man, nothing's changed in 25 years. Like, I love that. And again, my tastes have broadened and my horizons have gotten bigger, but I'm still true to myself. And I think that's so cool for me. I'm stoked for myself for that. I think that's cool. I feel like I am the most authentic version of myself.
Dude, that is, I think a lot of people get tripped up because they get lost looking for themselves when they're looking everywhere but inside. They're looking for validation other places. And I think you to realize that from a young age, like, you're like, this is what I'm about. And like you said, even if it's just buying Dookie and listening to Basket Case for the first time and just being like, yo, that's what I want to do. Like, people don't get that vision. And even if they do, they don't stick with it. So that speaks to the people, not only like that support you, but like your close ones, your loved ones, the friends you choose, like they all supported that vision of you. And you had, like, I know you said like you really didn't drink, you really didn't smoke, you like that wasn't really your scene. You hung out in the scene, but that just wasn't you. Like, you have this thing about you where like you're so magnetic to people, and like peer pressure never got to you to change, which I think, like you said, the vision was there and you listened like that gut, that instinct of yours, and just followed it. The intuition has just been like your guiding light, whether you've known it or not. You're like, 35 years old, I'm still wearing the black t-shirts. The only thing that has changed is I have some ink on my arms and legs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got a couple more tattoos than I did when I was 12, but yeah, exactly.
That's big, man. I mean, we're running up on an hour here, so I don't want to keep you too long because I always like to keep it to an hour, because if you ever want to come back, I want to have more stuff to talk about too. So I want you to be able to sign off here and like tell people what you got going on, where they can find you, your band. I know I have your Instagram banner up here if people want to look, but yeah, give them the spiel, man, where they can find you and what you're up to.
Sick. Yeah. No, yeah. You got my Instagram handle up there at Justin Lansdale. My band is at 22.punkrock on Instagram. You can find us 22 with a period at the end on Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. We'll be releasing new music on a monthly-ish basis. And I think that, yeah, and catch us playing. We're playing a lot of dates. We play in Philly a lot. We play in the burbs. I shoot for a magazine called Palette. That's at 12th and Market on Instagram. And I think that magazine usually is bi-yearly-ish. It's a beautiful print magazine for anyone who is a creative and is looking to check out some really cool artwork and photography from the area, skateboarding based. And God, other than that, if anyone needs a friend and is going through a hard time in a chronic illness or a chronic disease that they need to talk to someone who can relate, feel free to hit me up. I would love to be an inspiration as people have done for me. So,
dude, that is huge. And like you said, it's just giving back the things that have come to you. And I do believe you said, I don't know if it is the kindness and the karma coming back. And like, I fully believe that it is. I do. I think, I think I speak confidently with you just because, like I said, I've known about you. We were like not tight in high school, but we knew of each other. And like I said, like people have always just spoken so highly of you, continue to speak highly of you. And like, I am not surprised that you are handling all these things the way you're handling them, because that's how I would expect Jamon to handle it. You know what I mean? Like, so continue being the best version of yourself. And the fact that you're reaching out and offering your hand to people that are going through chronic illnesses and stuff like that, I think is just another part of your mission that you're just tapping into, because shedding light on not just like I do the mental health, but like you have a whole unique perspective. And if anybody's listening is going through it, and it isn't on Instagram or anything like that, shoot me an email at somebody like you 444 at gmail.com, and I will get you in contact with Jamon or Justin here. And continue doing beautiful things, man. And I would love to have you back on the podcast. Love to have you do your thing. And also, I was going to say, if you're in the Lansdale area and looking for headshots, I know you're doing some headshot stuff too for photography. So
yeah, I got a home studio. So if anyone needs an updated LinkedIn photo or some portrait shots, hit me up. Ben, seriously, thank you for your kind words, dude. Thank you for the podcast and the vibes you put out. Honestly, it's been a pleasure to be on here with you, and I would love to come back if you would ever have me on.
Oh my God. Absolutely, man. Hang in. I'm going to end the broadcast here and we can wrap up in the post green room, I guess we'll call it.
Hey,
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Somebody Like You podcast. Thank you so much to Justin Mondschein for hanging out with us, chatting and enlightening us on an inspiring journey that he is currently on, has been on, and will continue to embark on. So everybody, hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening, rest of your day. And remember to go spread some love to some people today. I'll talk to y'all later.